I spent years saving for a luxurious Spain trip with my parents, but they took my jobless sister instead and faced a nightmare abroad. My sister Carmen went through a messy divorce that left her an emotional wreck. When I say messy, I mean full-on disaster, arguments about money, her ex trying to keep the dog, late-night crying sessions that woke up half the neighborhood. It wasn't pretty. Carmen basically fell apart, and my parents and I had to pick up the pieces. My mom Anna was running around doing everything for her, helping her move out, dealing with lawyers, even cooking for some nights because she's just too fragile right now. My dad, Javier, tried to play it cool, but you could tell the whole thing was wearing him down. He started looking 10 years older in just a few months. And me? I was doing whatever I could to help out too, even though I had my own stuff going on. I work full-time and have my own bills to pay. But I still chipped in for things like Carmen's groceries when she ran out of money, which was often. I even gave her my old car after hers broke down because she couldn't handle the stress of buying a new one. We all carried her weight because, well, that's what family does, right? Fast forward to earlier this year, things finally started to settle down a bit. Carmen moved into her new place, and my parents stopped worrying about her every second of the day. I wanted to do something nice for them, a way to say thank you for everything they've done, not just for me but for Carmen too. So, I started planning. I'd been saving for years, just putting a little money aside every paycheck. Originally, I thought I'd use it for a down payment on a house or maybe a big trip for myself someday. But then I thought, why not use it for something special now? My parents had been through so much stress and deserved a break, so I decided to plan a trip to Spain for the three of us. Why Spain? My mom always talked about wanting to visit Barcelona to see the Sagrada Familia. She's obsessed with architecture, and it's been her dream for as long as I can remember. My dad's more of a foodie, so I figured he'd love the tapas and paella. Plus, Spain has a little bit of everything: beaches, history, culture. It just felt perfect. I went all out. I spent hours researching the best flights, hotels, and tours. I made sure we'd have time to relax too, with plenty of free days to explore or just enjoy each other's company. The whole thing cost way more than I'm comfortable admitting, but I didn't care. It wasn't about the money. It was about creating memories with my parents. I pictured us wandering through cobblestone streets, eating churros dipped in chocolate. Anyway, the day of the trip finally came. I woke up early to pick them up and drive them to the airport. I was so excited I barely slept the night before. I pulled into their driveway, right on time. Or so I thought. As soon as my mom stepped onto the porch, she said, "You're late." I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. "It's 7:03, Mom, 3 minutes late." I tried to laugh it off, but she just gave me that look, you know the one. I got out of the car to help with their luggage. My dad came out with his suitcase, and I was about to grab it when the door opened again. That's when I saw Carmen dragging her own suitcase behind her. I stopped in my tracks. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice already tight. My mom looked at me, smiling way too much. "Oh, Valeria, we decided Carmen should come instead of you. She's been through so much lately, and she really needs this trip." "Instead of me?" My heart was racing, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "Mom, I've been planning this for so long. I paid for everything." She waved me off like I just said something ridiculous. "And we're so grateful, sweetheart, but you worked so hard. You can take another trip later. Carmen needs this right now." Carmen didn't even look guilty. She just smirked and said, "Thanks for understanding, Val. This means a lot to me." I turned to my dad hoping he'd back me up, but he avoided my eyes and handed me his suitcase like it was no big deal. This couldn't be real, but what could I say? I wasn't about to throw a tantrum in the driveway. So, I swallowed my anger, clenched my jaw, and forced a tight smile. "Let's get going then," I said, my voice flat. The car ride to the airport was weird. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't just the awkward silence, it was the heaviness in the air, like everyone knew something was off, but nobody wanted to be the first to say it out loud. Well, not everyone. Carmen clearly had no clue. She was sitting in the back seat, chatting away like this was the greatest day of her life. "Oh my gosh, Mom," she said, leaning forward to the front seat. "Did you see that thing on TikTok about the shopping streets in Madrid? I have to go." "And do you think we'll have time for a day trip to Toledo?" I read that it's like, so cute and historical or whatever. I didn't even glance at the rearview mirror. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers started cramping. How was she so casual about this? Did she really not get how screwed up it was that she was here instead of me? Mom just chuckled like everything was fine. "Don't worry, Carmen, we'll have time for everything. And even if we don't, we'll be back someday, right, Javier?" My dad, sitting quietly in the passenger seat, gave some half-hearted like he didn't want to be involved in the conversation. Smart move, honestly, but also kind of infuriating. He hadn't said one word to me since we left the house. It was like he couldn't even look at me. I couldn't keep quiet any longer. So, just to be clear, I said, my voice flat, this is officially her trip now? The car went quiet for a second. Then Carmen, oblivious as always, said, don't be so dramatic, Val. I mean, you'll get your turn eventually, right? Eventually? My grip on the wheel tightened, and I had to force myself to take a deep breath before I snapped. Sure, Carmen. Whenever eventually happens, let me know. Mom turned to me, all fake sweetness. Valeria, please don't ruin this for Carmen. She's had such a tough year. You know how hard the divorce was for her. There it was, the reason, the excuse for everything they'd done this past year, Carmen's divorce. It was like a golden ticket she could flash whenever she wanted something. Need groceries but don't feel like paying for them? Flash the divorce card. Don't want to deal with life's responsibilities? Divorce card. Now it was the let's steal Valeria's trip to Spain card. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard it hurt, but I didn't say anything else. What was the point? They'd already made up their minds. They always had, honestly. Carmen needed this. Carmen deserved that. It had been the same story for as long as I could remember. If you asked them, I was the strong one, the one who could handle anything. Carmen was the fragile one, the one who needed to be protected. Protected from what? I never really figured that part out. I kept my mouth shut the rest of the drive, even though Carmen couldn't seem to stop talking. She kept going on about all the things she wanted to do in Spain, throwing out random facts she must have Googled 5 minutes before leaving the house. Oh, and Mom, did you know the Sagrada Familia is still under construction? Isn't that wild? Like, what have they been doing all these years? Mom humored her with a polite, oh wow. But I could tell she wasn't actually paying attention. I wasn't either. I was too busy staring at the road, wishing I could just turn the car around and go home, or, better yet, drop them off and leave them stranded on the curb. But no, I couldn't do that because I'm the responsible one. The closer we got to the airport, the heavier the silence from the front seat got. My dad didn't say a word, which wasn't like him. Usually he'd be cracking some dumb joke to lighten the mood or at least trying to smooth things over. Not this time. He just sat there, fiddling with his phone like it was the most interesting thing in the world. I could feel the tension rolling off him, but he didn't do anything to fix it. I guess he figured it was easier to keep his mouth shut and let Mom handle things. Typical. When we pulled up to the drop-off zone, I parked and got out to help with their bags. Carmen hopped out first, practically skipping as she grabbed her suitcase from the trunk. Mom followed, thanking me for driving them like she hadn't just kicked me off my own trip. Dad still avoided eye contact as he handed me a suitcase, muttering something like, thanks Valeria, under his breath. Mom came over and gave me a hug, which I barely returned. Thank you for understanding, sweetheart, she said. This means a lot to us and a cure, Mom, I said, my voice completely monotone. I didn't even try to hide how pissed I was. Why bother? They obviously didn't care how I felt, so why should I? Carmen, of course, had to get in one last jab before she left. Thanks, Val, you're the best, she called, grinning like this was all some big joke. I stood there on the curb, watching them disappear into the terminal. I waited until they were out of sight before I got back in the car, gripping the steering wheel and staring straight ahead. My chest felt tight, and my stomach was in knots. This wasn't just about the trip, it was about everything, all the times I'd put their needs ahead of my own, and gotten nothing in return. This trip was supposed to be my way of bringing us closer together, of showing them how much I appreciated everything they'd done. And what did I get for it? A slap in the face. The drive home was a blur. I couldn't stop replaying the whole thing in my head over and over again. Carmen's smirk, Mom's dismissive tone, Dad's silence. It all felt so unfair. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the anger had completely taken over. I sat in the car for a few minutes, gripping the wheel so hard my fingers started to ache. Then I got out, slammed the door behind me and marched into the house. I didn't even bother taking off my shoes. When I sat down, my hands were still shaking, not because I was nervous or upset, but because I was angry. Furious, really. The kind of anger where you can feel it bubbling in your chest and pounding in your head, and you know if you don't do something, you're going to explode. I opened the laptop, pulled up my email, and just stared at the screen for a second. The itinerary for the trip was right there in my inbox, taunting me like some cruel joke. Flights, hotels, tours, everything, all meticulously planned and paid for by me. All for a trip I wasn't even invited on anymore. I clicked on the hotel confirmation first. The boutique hotel in Madrid. I'd chosen it because it was supposed to be charming and intimate, with amazing reviews about the service and location, a place where we could relax after long days of sightseeing and enjoy each other's company. Well, apparently that was just for Carmen now. Not anymore, I muttered under my breath. It took about 3 clicks to cancel the reservation. I didn't even hesitate. The moment I hit cancel booking and saw the confirmation email pop up in my inbox, I felt a small sense of satisfaction. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Next was the villa in Seville. This one stung a bit more because I'd splurged on it. I mean, it had a private pool, a huge terrace, and was right near the old town. It was probably the nicest place I'd ever booked, and I'd been so excited about it. I could picture us sitting by the pool laughing and sharing stories, finally feeling like a family again after everything we'd been through. Except now, it would have just been Carmen sitting there, sipping iced tea and living her best life. Yeah, no, I said to myself, shaking my head. Cancel. The email popped up almost instantly. Another one down. The tours were next. I'd booked 2 private tours. I'd chosen private tours because I wanted us to have a more personal experience, to really connect with the places we were visiting without being stuck in some big tourist group. But now, they could wander around aimlessly for all I cared. Cancel, refund, done. I sat back in my chair for a second, letting the cancellations sink in. It felt good, really good. Not just because I was getting my money back, although that was a bonus, but because it felt like I was taking control of something that had been completely ripped away from me. Then, I remembered the flights. I pulled up the airline's website and logged into my account. The flights were probably the most expensive part of the whole trip, especially since I'd upgraded my parents and myself to business class. It was supposed to be a treat, something special for them after all the stress they'd been through. But now, the thought of Carmen sitting in business class, reclining in a comfy seat and sipping orange juice, made my blood boil. I couldn't cancel their flights entirely. They'd already checked in, but I could downgrade them back to economy. They went. I clicked through the options, feeling a little guilty for about half a second. But then I remembered the smug look on Carmen's face when she said, "Thanks for understanding, Val," and the guilt evaporated. Downgrade, confirm, done. I leaned back again, staring at the screen. There was one last thing to deal with, the return flight. I clicked on the return flight details, my finger hovering over the cancel button for a second. I hesitated. Was this too far? Would they be stranded in Spain, completely helpless? Then I remembered who I was dealing with. My parents weren't helpless. They'd figure it out, just like they'd figured out how to replace me on this trip. Good luck with this one, Carmen, I muttered, and hit the button. Cancel, confirm, done. The email popped up, and I stared at it for a long time. I felt lighter, I guess, like some of the weight that had been crushing me all day had finally been lifted. I closed my laptop and stood up, stretching my arms. My chest didn't feel so tight anymore, but the anger wasn't completely gone, not yet. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water, sipping it slowly as I thought about what I'd just done. Part of me still felt guilty, like maybe I'd gone too far. But then I remembered why I'd done it. 1. I didn't go too far. If anything, I'd done exactly what I needed to do. By the time I finished my water, I felt calmer. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my emails, double-checking the cancellations to make sure everything was in order. They were still going to Spain, but they weren't going to have the luxury vacation I'd planned for them. They'd have to figure it out on their own now, and honestly, that felt like justice. I left my laptop on the kitchen table and went to my room, grabbing a book from my nightstand. I wasn't in the mood to read, but I needed something to distract me. Anything to take my mind off the day I just had. As I lay there, flipping through pages without really reading them, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. For once, I hadn't just rolled over and let them walk all over me. I'd stood up for myself, even if it was in a quiet, behind-the-scenes way. They might not know it yet, but they were about to learn a very important lesson. You don't mess with someone who's been holding everything together for you. The call started before I even finished unpacking my suitcase. I was in my room, methodically putting away the clothes I'd packed for a trip I wasn't taking anymore, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I ignored it at first, then it buzzed again and again. I sighed, picking it up to see the barrage of notifications, missed calls, voicemails, texts, all from my mom, naturally. I scrolled through the messages, each one sounding more frantic than the last. Anna, Valeria, we can't check into the hotel. They don't have our reservation. Call me right away. Anna, this isn't funny. Fix this now. Anna, what's going on? The front desk says we have no tours booked either. I smirked. Yeah, they were starting to figure it out. I put the phone down and went back to unpacking. It was almost funny how quickly they'd gone from, "Thank you, Val, you're the best to fix this now." What exactly did they think was going to happen? That I'd just sit back and fund their dream vacation after they decided I wasn't good enough to join? The buzzing continued as I hung my dresses back in the closet and placed my shoes back on the shelf. It filled the room like a mosquito that wouldn't leave me alone. By the time I finished unpacking, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and answered the next call. "Valeria!" Mom's voice came through, loud and sharp, like she'd been waiting for me to pick up for hours. "What did you do?" "The hotel says the reservation was canceled, and none of the tours are booked anymore." "I canceled them," I said, deadpan. There was a long pause. I could almost picture her standing in the middle of the hotel lobby, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Why would you do that?" she finally hissed. "Oh, I don't know," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Maybe because you decided to cut me out. You're lucky I even drove you to the airport. We thought you'd understand," she said, her tone shifting to something resembling guilt. "Carmen needed this and I didn't?" I snapped. "I've been helping you support her all year. I've paid for everything, and when I finally do something for myself, you kick me out of it." "No, Mom, I don't understand." Her voice grew sharper. "Valeria, we don't do this to each other." "Funny," I said. I was just thinking the same thing. Before she could respond, Carmen's voice came through in the background. "Mom, just hang up on her. She's being ridiculous." That was the last straw. "You know what?" I said, my tone icy. "You wanted Carmen on this trip so badly, so now you can enjoy it with her. Don't call me again to fix your mess. Goodbye." I hung up and turned off my phone. The silence was blissful. The next morning, I turned my phone back on out of curiosity. Predictably, there were more texts and voicemails. The first ones from Mom were angry. "Anna, this is childish, Valeria. You've humiliated us. We don't deserve this." Then they started to shift. "Anna, please, just fix this. We're your parents." Dad had even chimed in, which surprised me. He usually stayed out of stuff like this. "Javier, Valeria, this isn't like you. Let's talk." And, of course, Carmen had to add her 2 cents. "Carmen, just fix it already." I rolled my eyes and set the phone down. If they thought guilt-tripping me was going to work, they clearly didn't know me as well as they thought. By the third day, their frustration must have hit a boiling point, because the texts got even more dramatic. "Anna, Valeria, you need to call me back right now. The hotel we found is awful, and the tours we tried to book are all sold out. Carmen, thanks for nothing, Val." I wasn't sure if I should laugh or feel annoyed. They were really struggling to handle this on their own. It almost felt satisfying to see how quickly things fell apart without me around to pick up the pieces. Eventually, I got curious and decided to answer when Dad called. "Valeria," he started, his tone heavier than usual. "Your mom wanted me to talk to you." "Of course she did," I said. "She's probably still mad I didn't fix everything for her." He sighed. "Look, this has gotten out of hand. Your mom's upset, Carmen's furious, and this whole trip is, well, it's a mess." "Sounds about right," I said, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. "But you're better than this," he continued, like he thought I'd fold under a little flattery. "You've always been the reasonable one, the one who keeps everything together." That struck a nerve. "You're right," I said. "I am the one who keeps everything together, and I'm tired of it." "Valeria, this isn't just about the trip," he said, trying to sound calm. "Family. We should work through this together." "Family?" I said, my voice rising. "Is that what we're calling this? Because to me, it feels like I'm just the backup plan whenever Carmen screws up." There was silence on the other end of the line. Finally, he said, "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't need you to say anything," I replied. "I need you to understand that I'm done. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't important enough to be part of this trip. Now you can live with it." I hung up before he could respond and turned my phone off again. By the time I turned my phone back on again, the silence had been blissful, but I had this nagging feeling they hadn't let it go. Sure enough, as soon as my phone powered up, the notifications came pouring in like a floodgate had burst. It was like they thought spamming me would somehow make me cave. I scrolled through the messages, and honestly, it was almost impressive how many emotions they managed to pack into their frantic texts. "Anna, Valeria, this is getting out of hand. We need to talk." "Carmen, seriously, Val, you're so petty for this. Mom is losing her mind, and it's your fault." "Anna, the second hotel we found is awful. We can't even figure out the air conditioning, and it's so loud here. How could you do this to us?" Now that I'd stepped back for once in my life, they were losing their minds. I opened a voicemail from Mom because I figured it would at least be entertaining. Her voice came through, sharp and angry at first. "Valeria, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is unacceptable. We are stranded here trying to salvage this trip, and you've made it impossible. Carmen is devastated, and your father and I—" She paused, and her tone softened, probably hoping to guilt me into feeling bad. "We're so disappointed in you. This isn't who you are. Call me back so we can sort this out." I laughed out loud. This isn't who you are. The irony of that statement hit me like a brick. Who I was, apparently, was the one who always put them first, who always made sure things ran smoothly no matter how much it cost me financially, emotionally, or otherwise. Well, not anymore. Over the next couple of days the texts kept coming, but they started to shift. Instead of just angry rants, there were hints of desperation. "Javier, we just want to understand why you're so angry." That one almost made me laugh. Why I was so angry, really? After everything they'd done, they still didn't get it. But I wasn't going to explain it to them again. They could figure it out on their own. Meanwhile, I spent my days enjoying the peace and quiet, without their constant demands hanging over me. I finally had time to focus on myself. Of course, the peace didn't last long. On the fourth day, Mom called again, and for some reason, I answered. Maybe I was bored, or maybe I just wanted to see what excuse she'd come up with this time. Valeria, she barked as soon as I picked up. This isn't funny anymore. We are struggling here. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? We're in this horrible hotel, and we don't know how to get anywhere because the tours you canceled were supposed to include transportation. So, you're mad because you actually have to plan things for yourselves? I asked, my tone completely deadpan. You're acting like a child, she snapped. And you're acting like I owe you something, I shot back. Guess what, Mom? I don't. That was it for me. Enjoy the trip, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Oh wait, you can't because you're completely unprepared, not my problem. Goodbye. If they wanted to act like I didn't matter, then they could figure out how to survive Spain without me. By the time their flight back home was due, I had fully settled into my quiet, stress-free routine. My phone stayed off most of the time, and I'd only turned it on once or twice to check for anything important, work, friends, bills, things like that. The endless stream of texts and voicemails from my parents and Carmen didn't exactly qualify as important, so I just ignored them. I'd gotten used to the silence. It was peaceful. But the day their flight was scheduled to land, I figured they'd come straight to me. I wasn't going to hide. If they wanted to throw their tantrums in person, they were welcome to try. Sure enough, about an hour after their plane touched down, a taxi pulled into their driveway, and I saw them climbing out, dragging their bags behind them. I was already there, parked in their driveway, sipping coffee on their porch swing like I didn't have a care in the world. They spotted me as soon as they got out of the car. Mom looked exhausted but still managed to look annoyed. And Dad, well, he just looked like he wanted to disappear. Carmen was the first to speak. Well, I hope you're happy, Val. You completely ruined the trip. I raised an eyebrow but didn't bother standing up. Did I? Or did you ruin it when you decided to kick me off the guest list? Mom's jaw tightened, and she threw up her hands like this was somehow my fault. You know what you did, Valeria? Canceling everything? That was spiteful and childish. We couldn't even find decent hotels after that, let alone tours. It was a nightmare. Oh no, I said, feigning concern as I took another sip of coffee. A nightmare, you say? What happened? Did Carmen not get her Instagram-worthy photos? Carmen groaned. You're so petty. It's not about Instagram. Isn't it though? I shot back. Because from where I'm sitting, it sure looked like this trip was all about you. Dad stepped in, his voice quieter but still firm. Valeria, you didn't have to cancel everything. You could have just, I don't know, let it go and come on the next trip. That got me to my feet. I put my mug down on the little table beside the swing and folded my arms. The next trip? Really? You think I'm going to just brush this off and plan another trip for the three of us? Or is Carmen going to magically need that one more than me too? I continued, my voice steady. You always think Carmen needs more. More attention, more support, more help. And I'm always the one who has to sacrifice so she can have it. Not this time. Carmen crossed her arms and scoffed. Wow, Val, get over yourself. You're acting like this trip was some huge gift when really it's just money. You'll make more. I stared at her, my jaw tightening. Do you even hear yourself? Do you know how much work and sacrifice went into planning that trip? How many things I gave up so I could make it special for Mom and Dad? And you just waltz in at the last minute and take it like it's owed to you. You're unbelievable. We didn't mean to make you feel like that, Dad said, but his voice was weak. But you did, I said, holding his gaze. And now you're upset because I didn't just roll over and take it. You're mad because I finally said enough is enough. Mom's face softened a little, and for a second, I thought she might actually apologize. But then she said, we just thought you'd understand, Valeria. You're so strong, and Carmen isn't. I finished for her. Yeah, I got the memo. I've been hearing it my whole life. Guess what, Mom? Being strong doesn't mean I don't have feelings, and it doesn't mean I'm okay with being treated like I don't matter. There was silence for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning in Mom's head. Carmen looked like she wanted to say something snarky, but for once, she kept her mouth shut. Finally, Dad broke the silence. We're sorry, Valeria. We didn't think about how much this would hurt you. I raised an eyebrow. No, you didn't, and that's the problem. You never think about me. You just assume I'll keep holding everything together while you focus on Carmen. Well, not anymore. From now on, I'm putting myself first. Mom's lips tightened, but she didn't argue. I could tell she wanted to, but she didn't have a leg to stand on. Good, I said, picking up my bag from the swing. I'm glad you're back safe, but don't expect things to go back to the way they were. I'm done being your doormat. I walked to my car, ignoring their calls for me to stop. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Mom looked stunned, Dad looked defeated, and Carmen just looked pissed. A few weeks after the blow-up with my parents and Carmen, I booked a solo trip to Spain. The idea came to me while I was scrolling through Instagram one night. Ironically, Carmen had posted some half-decent pictures from their trip, grainy selfies in front of the Sagrada Familia, an awkward group photo by the Alhambra. It looked like they'd patched together something resembling a vacation after I canceled everything. But it was nowhere near what I'd planned. That thought didn't fill me with guilt. It made me realize something. I didn't need to tie my happiness to theirs anymore. Why should I miss out on Spain just because they ruined my first plan? I had the money back from all the canceled bookings, and the idea of going on my own started to feel freeing. No schedules to accommodate, no family drama, no compromises, just me doing what I wanted when I wanted. When I flew back home, I felt lighter. My parents had texted me a couple of times while I was gone, and I'd skimmed through their messages. Mom was trying to sound apologetic, but it still had that undertone of guilt-tripping she was so good at. "Anna, hope you're enjoying your trip. Maybe we can talk when you get back." I didn't reply right away. I wanted to, but on my terms. I'd made that mistake too many times before, rushing to smooth things over just to keep the peace. Not this time. A couple of weeks after I got back, I was feeling pretty good about how things were going. I had my life back in my hands, my boundaries were solid, and I'd made peace with the fact that I was going to sacrifice for my family anymore. But, of course, that peace didn't last long because my parents and Carmen just couldn't leave well enough alone. It started with the calls. At first, it was just the occasional checking in type of message. Mom would call and leave a voicemail like, "Hi Valeria, just wanted to see how you're doing. Give us a call when you can." Nice enough on the surface, but I could tell there was an underlying tension. I ignored all of it, every text, every voicemail, every guilt trip. I wasn't ready to have another argument or worse, pretend like everything was fine just to keep the peace. Then came the favors. It started with a message from Mom. "Anna, Valeria, your dad's car broke down, and we're struggling to figure out how to cover the repairs. I know you're good with budgeting. Can you help us out?" I stared at the text, feeling the familiar pressure creeping in. For years, I'd been the one to help out whenever something went wrong, whether it was helping with household expenses or stepping in during their financial messes. I'd always been the fallback. Not this time. I replied with a simple, "Sorry to hear that, maybe Carmen can pitch in." No response. A week later, Mom called again. This time, I decided to answer, just to see what they wanted. "Valeria," she started, her voice full of that fake sweetness she always used when she was trying to butter me up. "How are you, sweetheart? We haven't heard from you in so long." "I'm fine, Mom," I said, keeping my tone flat. Good, she said quickly. "Listen, your dad and I were wondering if you could come over this weekend. The gutters need cleaning, and Javier's back has been bothering him lately. You're so good at that kind of thing." I almost laughed out loud. Now they wanted me to come clean their gutters? "I can't," I said. There was a pause. "Why not?" she asked, her tone sharpening. "Because it's not my responsibility," I replied. "Hire someone if you need help." She sputtered for a second, clearly caught off guard. "That's not fair, Valeria. We've apologized already." "No, you haven't," I said, cutting her off. "You've made excuses. You've tried to guilt me into forgiving you, but you've never actually apologized. And even if you did, it wouldn't change the fact that I'm done being your backup." I hung up before she could argue. The final straw came a few weeks later when Carmen sent me a text. "Carmen, hey Val, I need a huge favor. My rent's due and I'm short this month. Can you spot me $500? I'll pay you back ASAP." I stared at the message for a full minute, feeling the familiar anger rise up. After everything, she still had the nerve to come to me for money like nothing had happened. I typed out a quick reply and sent it before I could second-guess myself. "No." Her response came almost immediately. "Carmen, seriously? After everything I've been through, you can't help me out? Wow, you're unbelievable." That was it. I was done. No more explanations, no more arguments, no more giving them the benefit of the doubt. The next morning, I sat down and wrote an email to my parents. It wasn't long or overly dramatic, it was simple and to the point. "Hi Mom and Dad, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, and I've come to a decision. I need to step back from this family dynamic for my own well-being. For years, I've been the one to hold everything together, to sacrifice my own needs for the sake of keeping the peace. But I can't do it anymore. I need space to focus on myself and build the life I want, free from the constant pressure to fix everyone else's problems. This isn't a decision I've made lightly, but it's one I feel is necessary. I hope you'll respect my boundaries moving forward." Valeria, I hit send and blocked their numbers. In the weeks that followed, there were a few attempts to get through to me. Emails from Dad, Facebook messages from Mom, even a friend of theirs reaching out on their behalf. I ignored all of it. It was hard at first. But as time went on, I realized how much lighter I felt without their constant demands and guilt weighing me down. For the first time in years, I was free to focus on myself without feeling like I owed anyone anything. Cutting ties wasn't easy, but it was the right decision. Some people might say I went too far, but honestly, I don't regret a thing. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away, and that's exactly what I did.